Hello and welcome to Spardha Lines, your one-stop destination for the civil services preparation, UPSC, KPSC and other relevant examinations. Today we will try and understand some of the important articles from both pre as well as your mains perspective. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article here is speaking about taking a giant leap for a new ethics in the outer space. What is this article speaking about? The article takes a reference to the Antarctica Treaty, the missions that have been undertaken in Antarctica, and it also draws a parallel to the Outer Space Treaty as well. So what is the author trying to create? The author is trying to create parallels between two issues. One is with respect to Antarctica, the other is with respect to the outer space. The author says that when it comes to Antarctica, we have already established a certain protocols in order to ensure peaceful use of Antarctica. Similar such parallel will also have to be drawn to the outer space as well, where we have to use the outer space, especially moon, for the peaceful purposes, is what is this article in a brief gist. Let's understand in greater detail. The author goes on to say that when it comes to the human race is known for its innovation. The human race is known for its constant endeavor. The human race is known for the recognition. So each of the individual that exists in a particular country drives hard to create its own impact in the society. An individual will go on to become a community will go on to become a country as well. So countries have become a countries of innovation. They want to establish themselves, they want to create an impact in the society, and they also want to put their flag in a particular society so that they are recognized the world over. One such example is what the author takes with respect to Antarctica. What exactly happened? There was a drive, or there was a push between countries that they have to become the flag bearers of a particular innovation. So they wanted to discover lands as well. So when you go to the 12th century, 13th century, 14th century, so on and so forth, what you had were people and countries who wanted to establish they are the flag bearers of discoveries of particular country. For example, when you look at United States of America and when you look at people of their country, they wanted to establish that it is this country who were able to discover certain regions. It is this country who were able to renovate and innovate new mechanisms as well as tools as well. So in a fight between United Kingdom, Norway as well as some people in United States of America, they wanted to discover places as well. So people from Norway as well as United Kingdom wanted to understand the Arctic region, the northern pole, the northern hemisphere, while people from Norway as well as United Kingdom wanted to explore the northern hemisphere as well as the northern pole. There were people from United States as well as Americas, they went on to discover something impeccable in the northern pole. So who became the flag bearers, who were the first to initiate this particular and discovery of the region? It happened to be people from the Americas. So as a result, some individuals from Norway as well as Britain, they wanted to leave this northern hemisphere, the northern pole, discover what was happening in the southern pole. So what do? They stop their mission that they originally envisaged for discovery of the northern pole, and they move towards the south pole, and they go on to discover places like Antarctica. So one such example the author brings into picture is with respect to Robert Scott as well as Rond. Robert Scott happened to be a British naval officer and Rond happens to be a Norwegian explorer. These two individuals from Norway as well as Britain, they wanted to find out what's happening in the southern pole, which is in Antarctica. Both left for the expeditions, both wanted to discover and they wanted to put their flags in this part of Antarctica. While they left simultaneously, it was Roald who went on to achieve the first. So he was the first person who went up to South Pole, he went up to Antarctica, put up the flag in this part of Antarctica region. So both of them left simultaneously, both of them wanted to discover Antarctica, they wanted to be the first flag bearers in Antarctica, but it was Roald who was able to first reach the destination because he did not have much of the weather disturbances, but Robert had weather disturbance and he was not able to reach first in Antarctica. So the human endeavor is always to achieve great success. They have to become the flag bearers. They wanted to always be the first in achieving and discovering, and it is rolled from Norway who happened to discover this, and he reached Antarctica and southern pole first. Why are we discussing about it? There are two parameters to it. One is, after the discovery of Antarctica, there were a couple of other countries which also came over to Antarctica. There were boundaries that were drawn. These boundaries said that this particular area belongs to Norway, this area belongs to Argentina, this area belongs to United States of America, this area belongs to United Kingdom, so on and so forth. So a boundary was drawn. So immediately after the first discovery, you had Norwegians who were able to draw a boundary and prescribe that this would be my boundary and this will be my mode of operation in Antarctica. So while they discover, they also make a naming convention. And from the preliminary examination point of view, remember, we have Dronning Maud Land. This is also called as Queen Maud Land. The Norwegian claim also to Peter one island. So what we have is two islands as well as places. Where are those? One is the Dronning Maud Land. It happens to be in Antarctica. Then what you also have is Peter one island. This belongs to Norway. So from the preliminary examination point of view, remember, the Dronning Maud Land and Peter one island is in Antarctica and was initially under the control of Norway because it was discovered by a Norwegian citizen. This is important from the preliminary examination point of view. And from the mains examination point of view, what this article says is that after the discovery, many other countries started coming up and they started saying that this is my area, this is my area. So there was some skepticism that was introduced. What is this skepticism? The skepticism basically went on to say that if there are more number of countries coming over, they start conducting scientific activities, they start experimenting in Antarctica, this could lead to lot of environmental disasters as well. Why? Because at the same time there was also Cold War as well between United States of America and Russia. This we are coming down to 19th century, 18th and the 19th century. So there was Cold War that was brewing between United States of America and Soviet Union, and they also wanted to test their atomic missions in Antarctica. Why? Because Antarctica is one such place on the southern pole where you do not have much of the human race present. So why not go about exploring this particular place and also conduct our atomic activities? So this was brewing in the minds during the Cold War. So in order to prevent it, in order to make sure that this is in the pristine nature, this is not changed over a period of time, there are no people who will have a significant impact on the environment, they came up with International Geographical Year in the 1958. So what was this year all about? This basically went on to say that yes, all of these countries who made some explorations in Antarctica, they would be able to place, but this will be within the contours of the defined boundaries. So you have defined your boundaries for themselves, but this boundary along with the logical boundary of scientific exploration. So the physical, but what we will have is the scientific boundary, that you would not be able to conduct any of the activities which is going to be detrimental and harmful for the environment of Antarctica. So under the leadership of United States of America, President Dwight Eisenhower convened in 1959 on Antarctic Conference of 12 countries active in Antarctica. While this particular conference was called, we have Argentina which also proposed that there will be no atomic explorations in toto, which means absolutely there will be no absolute atomic energy exploration or explosion that will take place. Even the experimentation will not happen in toto, absolutely no exceptions whatsoever. That is when United States of America came up with a proposal. What did United States of America say? We will not have any kind of atomic explosion or experiment that happens in Antarctica. But there is an exception. It had a proviso. What is it? That if prior permission is taken, consultation is taken, only then it can happen, said United States of America said this particular conference that if you are taking the prior permission and if you are consulting after permission is granted by these 12 countries and the countries which are operating, then atomic energy experimentation can be conducted. But then Argentina did not accept to it, Soviet Union did not accept to it, Chile did not accept to it. Ultimately they came to a conclusion that when it comes to Antarctica and the southern pole, there will be no atomic energy experiment that will be conducted in Antarctica. So what are we drawing reference to? The reference that we are drawing to is there are physical boundaries that have been established in Antarctica. Countries wanted to conduct experiment. They also wanted to make use of economic advantages. They wanted to exploit the economic resources. All these resources that are existing in Antarctica, the scientific experiments that you conduct, you can go ahead and conduct it, but this should not harm the larger purpose of Antarctica, and it has to be only used for the larger humanity as well as for the peaceful process. So what happens in Antarctica? You have the scientific exploration, you had people's will, they become the flag bearers, that they start demarcating a particular physical boundary, but they ultimately conclude that despite having the physical boundaries that we have discovered, we have explored, what we will have is all the countries which are coming up to this particular locality, they will only make use of Antarctica for the scientific peaceful purposes. So they define a protocol, and that protocol went on to clearly say that it is only for the scientific purposes, peaceful purposes, that we're going to make use of Antarctica. So Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Chile, France, and they said that there will be freedom of scientific research in Antarctica, and this will be only for the peaceful use of the continent, and there will be complete demilitarization. There will be no militarization activities that will be taking place, as the treaty prohibited nuclear testing, military operations, economic exploitation and further territorial claims. And 54 parties to the treaty, with having consultative status, India also has its own station on Queen Maud's Land as well. So you can conduct scientific exploration, scientific advances for the greater glory of humanity. So the gist from this entire piece is that when it comes to southern pole, it is important that we keep this Antarctica or the southern pole in a pristine nature, conduct scientific activities for the peaceful purposes. So what is the intent? The intent is you made a discovery. It was the will, it was the innovation will of the people who made them to discover this piece of land. So the author goes on to say, since we wanted to be innovative, we wanted to explore, we discovered Antarctica. Similarly, outer space is one region where we have the human will, we have the human innovation to explore outer space as well. We wanted to be the flag bearers, we wanted to be the first ones who go to moon as well. So there are countries like United States of America, NASA has gone to moon, and you also have countries like Russia who also have their missions like Luna, so on and so forth. And we now have Chandrayaan as well, and we have named a point as Shiva Shakti point as well in the southern pole of moon. So this discovery, this innovation that we wanted to be the flag bearers has happened in the outer space. Now it has happened in the moon. So what do we have in Antarctica? We have a treaty, that this particular treaty will only ensure that there is peaceful use of Antarctica. Similarly, in outer space as well as in moon, whatever discoveries are being made, whatever innovations are being created, this should only be used for the peaceful purposes, for the greater glory of the humanity. Similar, when we have Antarctica treaty, similarly we also have some wordings with respect to the moon as well. What is the moon treaty that we currently have? There has been a moon agreement which has been adopted by the General Assembly back in the year 1979 in Resolution 34 of 68, elaborating on many of the provisions of the Outer Space Treaty that provide space probing humanity's dealings with the moon should be used exclusively for the peaceful purposes, that its environment should not be disrupted, that the United Nations should be informed of the location and the purpose of any station established on it. So what is the intent? The intent is you go to the moon, you have every respect, keep the moon as it is, Outer Space Treaty, follow the principles of it, use it only for the peaceful purposes, do not disrupt the environment, do not conduct any militarization activities, and if you're going to this place or whatsoever place in the moon at whatsoever point, inform the United Nations the purpose of this visit as well as the scientific experiment. So moon and its natural resources are the common heritage of the mankind, and that an international regime should be established to govern the exploitation of such resources is the intent of the Moon Agreement. So after Chandrayaan 3 became successful, we have Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi ji, who went on to say that the success of Chandrayaan 3 is not just India's alone, but it belongs to the entire humanity. Such is the beautiful words spoken by Indian Prime Minister, who happens to be Narendra Modi ji. Apart from these wordings, going forward, what we also have to develop, according to the author, is we have to craft a declaration of the fundamental rights of the outer space, thereby inaugurate new ethics for human activity in the outer space, including the Earth's responsibility towards outer space debris. This new ethic must make non-militarization of outer space a non-negotiable covenant. So the author goes on to say, we have some established principles. Despite these established principles, create new ethics, new values, new ethos, so that all the countries going with scientific exploration is able to mend and revert to these wordings as well as ethics that is established, says the author. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says keep calm. What is this article speaking about? The article here is speaking about what is called as the solar radiation management. What is this concept of solar radiation management? First, we have to understand the meaning of solar radiation. What is solar radiation? It is the energy emitted by the sun in all directions from the space. So what is solar radiation? It is the energy. It is the solar rays. It is the rays from the sun that is released from the sun from the outer space. It passes through the outer space and enters the earth. That is what is called as solar radiation. So what is SRM? SRM happens to be solar radiation management. How am I going to manage this solar radiation? We know for the fact that of late what we have is significant climate change manifestations that are taking place. So because of the climate change, the Earth's climatic weather, the weather conditions have increased the temperature, which means because of the anthropogenic induced factors, the temperature on Earth has increased over a period of time. In order to decrease the temperature that is there, multiple missions have been taken, multiple policy initiatives have taken, multiple scientific exploration projects have also been taken. One such project under the scientific regime happens to be geoengineering techniques. Under is the solar radiation management, which happens to be a geoengineering technique. So what is solar radiation management? You have the sun rays that is coming into the earth. It enters from the space and enters the earth. So even before it falls on the earth, reflect back the sun's rays. So what are we doing with the sun's rays? If it reaches the earth, it will increase the temperature. So even before it hits the surface of the earth, let's make sure that this sun's rays is reflected back to the space. That is what is called as solar radiation management. So this article goes on to speak about the solar radiation management techniques, its concerns, and the commission that has been appointed, and what is the way forward with respect to the solar radiation management. So what is solar radiation management? You have the sun's rays as shown in the image. So you have the sun's rays that comes up. It actually ideally will have to hit the earth's surface. If it hits the earth's surface, there will be increase of the temperature. This will further increase the climatic conditions according to the scientific committee. So instead of it reaching the earth, why not ensure that this is reflected back to the space even before it reaches the surface? That is what is called as the SRM, or the solar radiation management. For the solar radiation management, you have different kinds of techniques. Solar radiation management is different kinds of approaches, different kinds of mentalities, different kinds of initiatives and the methods. So amongst this, what are the possible methods of SRM? What we can make use of is the surface albedo enhancement. Second is increasing the reflectivity of the marine clouds. So you have these clouds that are created along the oceanic surface. If these marine clouds can be created by the geoengineering techniques, and if this can also reflect, then the sun's rays will not hit the surface. Third, increasing the amount of the stratospheric aerosols. These are the stratospheric aerosols. If this can be created, this will also reflect the solar radiation. Fourth, we can also make use of the space-based methods like use of satellite, so on and so forth. And fifth is by decreasing the amount of high altitude cirrus clouds. If we can reduce that, this will also help in reflecting the sun's rays back into the space. This is where the author goes on to say, yes, it's a marvel. It's a geoengineering marvel where human application has been applied. But is it all merry and is it all good? No. Why? That is because there are some concerns that are associated with this solar radiation management technique. What are the concerns? Let's say, for example, we have United States of America. Or let's say, for example, we have another country which is coming up with this solar radiation technique. So this country will start making use of this particular project and the technique in its home country, within the boundaries of its country. Let's say, for example, United States of America is conducting an experiment, solar radiation management technique, which is starting off in United States of America. But when it comes to climate related issues or weather related issues, United States of America may conduct an experiment in United States, but its likely repercussions may happen somewhere else as well. We know for the fact that when gas or anthropogenic induced factors or greenhouse gases is released by United States of America, its likely repercussions can happen to the entire world. So we don't know what could be the issues and concerns that may be arising with the experiment that can be conducted in United States of America. For them it may be good, but its likely complications can result in disastrous consequences for some other country. So the first major reason is we still do not have the validation, we still do not have the scientific data, we still do not have the numbers validate what are the likely consequences of it. So the experiment is conducted in United States or in India or in China, but its likely consequence can be to some other country. So this is the major problem when it comes to the SRM. The second major problem is, yes, we are coming up with a new innovation, but we are not understanding the root cause analysis. What is the root cause analysis? The root cause analysis is the greenhouse gases. The greenhouse gases are emitted by the human beings because of the industrial activity, because of the vehicles, so on and so forth. It is this root cause that has to be addressed. So instead of addressing the root cause, instead of addressing what the problem is, we are only addressing the symptoms of it. We are only addressing the surface layer problems of it. So instead of addressing why these emissions should be stopped, we are not focusing on that. We are only focusing on emissions that is taking place. That is, how are we going to manage the symptoms and not the root cause? That happens to be a second major reason. So all this means that the SRM, the solar radiation management techniques, may fall flat. That is why there was one of the commissions called as the Climate Overshoot Commission that was appointed. What is this Climate Overshoot Commission? This happens to be a commission that was appointed by the scientific community, and this particular community will understand what are the pros and cons of the SRM or the solar radiation management techniques. This particular committee went on to say that you have the solar radiation management techniques that you're coming up with, but there are likely disastrous consequences that it can come up with. There are experiments that have to be conducted, validated, and then it has to be implemented. Without conducting the experiment, you should not be implementing this particular project, said the Climate Overshoot Commission. However, it also said by the year 2100, we know from the Paris Principles as well as the Paris Agreement that 2 degrees centigrade is what we have to upkeep to reduce the temperature, and if 2 degree cannot be reduced to, at least 1.5 degrees centigrade temperature will have to be reduced. Since we do not have an alternative and we have very less time, we can go ahead with the solar radiation management technique, says this Climate Overshoot Commission. This is where the problem arises. The problem arises is because, as we just discussed, we do not know the likely repercussions, we do not know what could be the possibilities, we do not know what are the issues that may surface in the near future. So the article in this particular case goes on to say that rather than addressing and coming up with the scientific innovation, it is good, but it has to be experimented first, it has to be checked, and only after validity it has to be taken and implemented for the far root level. And at the same time, when it comes to such scientific validations, we also have to make sure that the root cause is addressed instead of only coming with the scientific experiment. What is the root cause? Industrialization, greenhouse gases, thermal energy. This has to be addressed, and rest of it will fall in place, says this article. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about Women Reservation Bill. We did discuss yesterday in our Women Reservation Bill what are the various aspects of this legislation, what are the provisions of it. But this article primarily goes on to speak about two factors. There are two articles that we have picked up. One is women's share in assemblies less than 10%. There is another thing called as the legislating change. First, let's look at what is this legislating change. This legislating change concept basically goes on to say that it will be implemented for the first time only in the 2029 Lok Sabha elections, and after that. The reason being that this reservation bill will only come into effect after the delimitation exercise takes into picture. When is the delimitation exercise taking into picture? 2026. So the article goes on to say, why has the government come up with this particular clause? Instead of introducing after the delimitation commission exercise, why not introduce the same thing right away? Let's start off with this exercise. The women have to be empowered. So this delimitation clause that exists will have to be eliminated. First point. Second point is that we did discuss that 1/3 of the seats will be reserved for the women. Within this 1/3, about 1/3 will be reserved for the SC/ST. So this also means that the SC/ST reservation will be provided. The opposition is also asking for the OBC reservation for the women. Because the opposition is asking for the OBC reservation for the women, this should not lead to undue delay as well, because the opposition will stop the process. They will ask for the introduction, so on and so forth. Then the government will make changes. The introduction and the implementation will take a hit, and as a result, as we go ahead, as time permits, we should start off with this legislation, and over a period of time, if changes have to be introduced, the same can be introduced is another one. The author also speaks about the number of people, that is the number of women represented in the legislative assemblies as well as in the Lok Sabha. So when you consider the Lok Sabha, currently we have 14.4% of the women represented in the Lok Sabha, but initially after independence it was 4.9%, 4.5%, so on and so forth. So kindly look into this chart. This is very important from the mains perspective. So this women reservation bill for the first time was introduced in 1996 by H.D. Deve Gowda sir's government. So it was the United Front government which first time introduced it, but subsequently because of changes they were not able to bring it as an act. But now an act, and it has also been passed in the Lok Sabha. But whenever you're writing your answers, make sure that you're given these details. For the first time it was 4.9% and subsequently it was 4.5%, so on and so forth. And when you look at other countries like let's say Sweden, it is about 46.4% right now. So this can also be taken as data for your examination. And when it comes to states like Tripura, it has about 15% representation. Chhattisgarh has 14.4% representation. West Bengal has about 13.6% representation. So the least happens to be Mizoram, which has no women legislators. Nagaland has about 3.3% legislators who happen to be women. These are some of the scientific data that you can give whenever you're writing your answers. Since we have already discussed this, these are the minute details that we have to look into. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about one of the tests called as the Truenat test. What is this Truenat test? This will help in detection of Nipah virus and many other tests. So what is it Truenat test? It happens to be a portable battery operated RT-PCR platform test. It can test for nearly 30 diseases and results take less than an hour, and these kits can make testing for Nipah virus rapid, on demand, closer to the affected people, resulting in early and fast diagnosis of the effective management of the disease and containment of the spread of the virus. So if you go by the traditional method, taking of the sample, sending to the lab, it is a very cumbersome process and it will take a lot of time as well. So instead of going by the traditional way, what we have is the Truenat test, where basically it is a battery operated RT-PCR platform. They would able to take this portable machine, go to the place where there is apprehension that Nipah virus is spreading, take the samples, test it immediately, and within half an hour to 1 hour, results will be given and they would be able to reduce the impact and the spread of the Nipah virus. If it is not, what would happen? You take the samples, send it to the laboratory. It will take a long time of about 8 hours, within which this person can also travel, increase the further spread as well. But with this portable battery based machine, they would able to go to that place, take the samples, conduct the experiment immediately, and also give results within half an hour to 1 hour, and ultimately they would be able to keep a check on the spread of the Nipah virus. So the Truenat test is a portable battery based RT-PCR platform which will help in identification of 30 or more diseases, and this will get the viruses in that particular experiment. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about two factors. One, who are the Kurmis? Second is we have a language called as Kurmali language. The Kurmis are a land owning farming community whose status varies from place to place. They are present in different states: Bihar, West Bengal, Jharkhand, Odisha, so on and so forth. There are states where they have been given the OBC status, that is other backward status. Now all that they are asking is for ST status. So these Kurmis are now seeking for the scheduled these Kurmis are now seeking for the scheduled tribe status. Kurmis are distributed across several states: Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Odisha, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, West Bengal, Jharkhand, Goa and Karnataka. They have OBC status, and it is not specific to one particular state. It can be in one state and may not be given in other states as well. In most states, Kurmis belong to the other backward classes in both central and state list for the reservation, and they now are seeking for the ST status. They have a language called as the Kurmali language. It happens to be an Indo-Aryan language classified as belonging to Bihari class of languages. As a trade dialect, it is also known as Panch Parniya in the 5 Parganas region. It covers in Jharkhand. Kurmali language is spoken by around 5.5 lakh people. It has its own script called as Kurmi Kudali, which is a modified version of Devanagari script. And all that they are also seeking is to add this Kurmali language to the 8th schedule. As part of the assignment, you have to put on the comment section, is English language part of the 8th schedule? Is English part of the 8th schedule languages? Please put it on the comment section. So as of now, Kurmali is not a 8th schedule language. They are seeking for adding this Kurmali language into the 8th schedule. This is what we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about World Alzheimer's Day. It is celebrated every year, or it is observed every year. It is observed every year on 21st of September with the objective of creating awareness about the misconception of dementia and Alzheimer's, and to encourage and support the families of Alzheimer affected patients to tackle and fight it. What is the theme for the year 2023? It is never too early, never too late, which underlines not only the pivotal role of Alzheimer's disease risk factors identification, but also the espousement of proactive risk reduction measures to hamper and, if possible, prevent the onset of the dementia. How do we prevent the onset? There are some principles which we can follow so that we have right practices, and this will ultimately reduce the Alzheimer's from occurring. What are those? One is abstinence from alcohol, lifelong learning enthusiasm, social interaction and stimulation in the later life. If these measures can be conducted, a certain level, Alzheimer's can be prevented. So basically, people have dementia and Alzheimer's. This can be prevented with activities, and an awareness is being created on 21st of September every year, and that is what is called as World Alzheimer's Day. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about Section 6A of the Citizenship Act. This Section 6A of the Citizenship Act was introduced as part of the Assam Accord. Under the Assam Accord signed by all Assam Students Union, Assam government and the Government of India on August 15, 1985 to detect and deport the foreigners, Section 6A was inserted to the Citizenship Act to grant citizenship to the people who have migrated to Assam. So there is a fixed criterion here. What is the criterion? Under Section 6A, foreigners who have entered Assam before January 1st, 1961 had been ordinarily resident in the state would have all rights and obligations of the Indian citizen. Those who had entered the state between January 1, 1966 and March 25, 1971 would have the same rights and obligations, except that they would not be able to vote for the next subsequent 10 years. But if it is after 1971, none of these rights would be provided. So March 25, 1971 happens to be the cutoff. So during that period, anything after that, these people would not be given the citizenship rights. So the Supreme Court will now hear the challenge to this Section 6A of the Citizenship Act. Once the Supreme Court hears this, we will take this up in an elaborate way. So as of now, remember that this Section 6A of the Citizenship Act was added because of the number of Bangladeshi migrant workers who happened to enter India prior to 1971, so on and so forth. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. So this is it for today. If you're liking these initiatives, please do like, please share it with your fellow aspirants as well, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. All the best.